Welcome back to another Reading and Correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today, we are doing chapter 56 of The Technician's Fight. Jeremy stood, along with his beta, before the others while they discussed him. He didn't know why either of them were there, other than it was how Kelsirians did things. He was confident that Earthers wouldn't bother with the presence of the soldier as they worked out if they would or not allow him on the battlefield. His training isn't over. Beta Goramik Toribar Sel Jezbiliam stated this passionately. And we know that if given the chance, the Earthers, that's going to be plural, will capture him. There's been too many attempts to dismiss the possibility. His combat abilities are impressive, another beta said when Jeremy didn't know, but he thought he'd seen her talk with Growl. But not a guarantee he won't be captured, the beta in charge of his training said, still without noticeable inflection. Jeremy had noticed how easy it was for the male to seem like he didn't care about an argument, no matter how long he spent in the middle of it. Jeremy thought it might even be a tool he used, as he watched a male get to the point of screaming at him, while the beta did nothing more than tilt an ear, then calmly make his counter-argument. That had ended with the male storming off and the beta returning to the group and continuing with the instructions as if nothing had happened. And we are ignoring a fact, another beta said as she glanced at the two of them. He's the only expert we have on Earther technology. He so wished they'd stop equating his knowledge of antimatter reactors and the power system associated with those to knowing everything there was to know about Earthers' thought. Again, plural. They needed to get their hands on an Earther technical database and then have Kelsirian's engineer pour through it and become the experts, so they'd stop expecting so much from him. The point is valid, the other female said. If we need to send him without. No, his trainer said. If he wasn't a hunter, he wouldn't be included in this hunt, regardless of the knowledge he has. His desire to be included is the reason he chose to become one, to undergo the training my pack gives, which he hasn't concluded. This is clearly extraordinary situations. Every hunt is extraordinary, the male replied, sounding bored. If they weren't, the military would handle them. You could see the effort the two females needed to keep their ears up. Can you get him ready in time? No. Can you? She closed her mouth on the exasperation. Is there anything we can do to have you agree this hunt is objectively safer with him as part of it? His instructor considered the pair, then turned to Jeremy. How far would you go to avoid capture, Hunter? Jeremy stared. He couldn't be suggested what he sounded like. He swallowed and closed his eyes. There was no way he could think Jeremy would rather die than risk capture. Risk being thrown in a box, humiliated, hurt, confused, until he broke. Worse, have that machine used on him. When he opened his eyes and spoke, he was surprised at how steady his voice was. I am a hunter. We die so others live. He'd rather that than risk betraying his people. He can go, the male said, then left. He blocked, parried, then was on the mat, his head ringing from the impact. Again, his beta instructed, and Jeremy got to his feet and did his best not to think of the three packs surrounding him. This was unwinnable, but third didn't care. Go! They came at him in twos and threes, striking and darting away. Their job was to bring him down, his was to keep standing. If he fell during the hunt, he could be captured. And if the possibility of capture became too high, Jeremy would have a pill to ensure the enemy couldn't use him against them. He was terrified, it might get to that, which was why he swallowed his complaints about how unfair this fight was every time he handed on the mat. Unfair now, there's a comma here, increases chances of returning from the hunt then. Again, Thor ordered, and Jeremy stood. Part of his terror came from how Gral had looked at him when Jeremy had told him that what he'd do if the Earthers captured him. Resolve and a hint of pride. Gral held him, if it happens. When you stand before Samian in the forest, you do so with pride. Stand tall and tell him that you kept your people safe. Tell him that you fought to live, that when his time come, when he can't defeat to take on Mongartine anymore, your heart will join you. The sheer certainty Jeremy would be there in his heart's eyes had kept him from replying, but he had nightmares after that. Nightmares of dying in the hunt and being alone in the vast nothingness, of standing among the trees and banners and being laughed at by this majestic Kelsirian towering over him for the audacity of thinking something like him would ever deserve to be in this sacred place. Of dying and waking up with that machine on his head and wanting to kill his heart. Again! Jeremy stood, ground his teeth, and made fist. He'd fall here over and over and over. And they'd make sure he fell hard. But once on the hunt, once among the Earthers, he wouldn't let any of them bring him down. He would be the one standing among the bodies. He would be the predator and them the prey. Jimmy looked at the stones before him. He had Harley Derimis Tokaran, and with him gold, silver treasures, and Pelteros Tafe del Goramer's burden. His set was worth more for having another god's field. Greed knew no bounds, and Arali was greed. 3 turns to go before Samian stepped out, ending the conflict, and only one of them could be victorious. The odds were in his favor, but opposite him stand the bane of odds. Zen reached into the pile, smiling as if he already knew which stone he was going to pull from it. Still time to ally yourself with the winner, he said. You refused me, Jeremy countered, and Pertirost has your lover. Don't put me in the middle of this little feud, his friend warned. He does, Zen agreed, sliding a tile to his hand, but there's someone Zenila Aran loves more than me. He turned the tile, revealing to take on Morgartine's skull. Without looking at it, or Pertiros, he moved his hand over. Sorry, his friend said, placing the stone with the female flipping the coin in Zen's hand. Luck and death, along with trade and food and the weather, made the hand powerful. But Jeremy was another battle. None of them were until it ended. Then all of them were. A battle of gods could turn at any time, until time became set by the Father God. Then it couldn't be anymore. Third drew a stone and cursed. Jeremy didn't pay attention. He didn't pay attention to when Leah, Scarif, or Durrani took theirs. They didn't matter. Their hands were middling at best. Zen was the only threat to his victory. Which was why, the next turn, when Pertiros said, I think I win, Jeremy stared. How is Samian in his hand? His friend placed the Father God next to Jezbiliam, Centerina, Salmiali, and Otamar. My namesake is in the game, Thur said. Didn't you notice the stone before? Jeremy shook his head. But he's up there. He pointed to the center of the table, representing the Father God's home, with the 13th pillar of the world, one of which fell at the end of each turn, the last one announcing Samian's arrival. He's the Father God, Leo said. No one dictates when he leaves his home, and his arrival always marks the end of the battle. I will admit, this is the first time I've seen his arrival created the victory of the one who drew him, Usually, when he arrives unexpectedly, we need to tabulate points to know who won. The 5 lovers, she added in awe. Jeremy hadn't understood what that had meant when he'd read the rules and looked over the value of the combinations. The 5 lovers was at the top, something he'd thought impossible to accomplish. None of the combinations among the gods ended up with 5 of them as lovers, but only because he hadn't considered Turok-Samian only because he hadn't considered Turok-Samian could be in play. Looks like your lover wasn't with you this time, Zenial Her Tahalan, Thur said, especially since if you hadn't drawn his favorite lover, Pertiros added, he'd have pulled Salmieli away from Jezbiliam, and I don't think 4 and 2 lovers gives me enough point to win when Jer got so much greed. It would have been a close battle, Scarif said, turning his tiles over and pushing them toward the center. Another? Jeremy and Thur checked their tablets. They both had training. We have time for another one, he said, and returned his stone to the center. Clear, came the instruction over his earpiece, and Jeremy hurried into the clawway, rifle slung over his back. He cursed as it caught on a conduit, and he lost seconds untangling it. He reached the exit and looked down to confirm the area was indeed clear. He dropped into the room next to Skaram, pulled his rifle, and crouched in position. Over the next minutes, the rest of his pack joined him, each via a pre-assigned route. Hunter Harum, Hunter Jeremy, you both paused on your way, Thur said, stepping into the room, looking at his tablet. Cause. The door wouldn't open, Harum said. Had to rewire the lock. Rifle caught, Jimmy said, still not used to moving around with that thing on my back. The beta nodded and made notes. Beta? Netrel said, then looked uncertain. Go ahead, Hunter. Why this new training? We'll be moving about as a pack, not individually, or through all those ways you're having us go. We aren't special ops, you know. Thur nodded, moving his hand behind his back. I'm new as a beta. This will only be my second hunt as one. But our previous one has made me realize something I never did as a hunter. Thinking the hunt will go as every previous one gets hunters killed. I won't allow that. The new skills each of you are learning is one. The new skill each of you is learning. The one. Okay. Each of you. I don't know if I don't. Yeah. Each skill each of you is learning. It's going to be a different phrase. The path you need to take forces you. Oh, needed. Okay, he's talking about the previous hunt. The path you needed to take forced you to use or may take into account as you move will allow us to more easily adapt to unexpected situation. If that's the case, shouldn't I get tools? Jamie said, that is basically my second expertise as a hunter. You'll assemble a toolkit before the hunt, limiting it to the most likely tools you'll need to deal with the Earther tech. And the most versatile ones. But I don't expect tech to jump out of a room to ambush us. These skill sets are specifically to increase our odds of surviving encounters with the opposition. He looked at his tablet, tapped the screen, and Jeremy's tablet buzzed. I've set you new starting location. Go to your position and await the start of the exercise. He and his packmates consulted their tablets, then left the room. Jeremy moaned as the fingers pressed against his sud-covered skin. Then he lathered Grisnir's back, this is an as. As he lathered Grisnir's back, hands rubbed his chest, his legs, and arms. He'd complained in the early in the early days of sharing showers with his pack after training about them focusing on him so much, and he'd been told to deal with it. They liked the feel of his skin, and the females had added this was the only time they got to enjoy him. He'd learned to appreciate it and to make sure he paid attention to each of his packmates, if not during the showers. Oh, okay. If not during a specific shower, over all those they took. Grisner turned, and she rubbed her muzzle against his cheek while he lathered her front. Then he bent to do her legs, and the others shifted their focus. The rinsing involved more hands on him, but this time came with complaints of it being ever so over so quickly. And once done, the drying was more hands, although he didn't need it. His lack of fur meant he was the only one who didn't need any fluffing to ensure everything dried properly. The fluffing between Thros and Urim turned intense enough. Thur turned their became intense enough. Thur turned their shower opaque, and the pair remained behind once they were dry. Dressed, they left, and Jeremy pulled Thur into a leisure alley to enjoy some time with his friend. Technician, the engineer said, please confirm that the readings for the room was bathed in red light. This is your captain and Alpha. All hunters are being activated. I repeat, hunters are active. Civilians, be plural. Be prepared to head to shelters at a moment's notice. We are entering the hunt. Jimmy logged out of his terminal and left the engineer's office to be a hunter. And that concludes chapter 56 of The Technician's Fight. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter will be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, as well as the others in the series, that is on Ream Story. If you are looking to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. Links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.